Hey everybody, welcome to RPM, Rock and Pop Mandolin, your site for learning classic rock and pop songs on the mandolin. My name is Mike DeJong, and in this video we are taking another look at that classic song called Iris from the Goo Goo Dolls. This is part 2 of our look at Iris. Of course, part 1 involved an exclusive interview with the man who played the mandolin parts on that track, LA session legend Tim Pierce. Please take a look at that video. It is also here on the channel. Really interesting to hear Tim's thoughts about playing on that song. By the way, he also played the lead guitar solo on that track as well. But the song Iris involves, well, it involves a little bit of trickery. And I will explain that in a few minutes once we get into the lesson. But first, if you're new here to the channel, thank you very much for checking us out. But don't forget to hit that little red subscriber button down there in the lower right corner on your way out. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you very much once again for your ongoing support. We really appreciate it. And if you'd like to help us out, maybe a little bit financially, and check out some of the lessons and other things I have on our Patreon page, check out the Patreon link down below. But that's enough business. Let's take a look at this great song by the Goo Goo Dolls called Iris, featuring Tim Pierce's mandolin part here on RPM. Okay, here's the little trick that I was talking about for playing Iris properly, or at least as close as you can to get to the original track. You want to drop your tuning down a little bit on your mandolin. You want to play in what I call drop D tuning for the mando. That's right, drop D tuning. And what drop D tuning means is you're going to lower one of your strings from E to D. Now, on the guitar, when you do that, it's usually the lowest sounding E string that gets dropped down to D. A lot of grunge songs play in drop D tuning. Well, this song by the Goo Goo Dolls involved a very strange guitar tuning where almost every string, except the thickest one, was tuned to D. So for you to get that riff on the mandolin, I think you've got to drop your high E string down to a D. So this string here, the first string, the highest sounding one, right now is not tuned to E. I've lowered it one note, or one whole tone, down to D, okay? So instead of being the same note as the 7th fret of the A string, as is normally done on the mandolin, I've dropped it down to the same note as the 5th fret of your A string here. Okay, so this note here is now an open D. So you can play a D chord just like that. Instead of putting this finger down as you normally would on a D chord, just play it like that. So that's an open D chord. And to me, I think this gives you a really authentic sound because you have 2 D notes ringing out while you're playing that opening riff. And as Tim Pierce explained in our exclusive interview, when he played this initial riff on the track way back in the late 1990s, he was doing what he called a drone note on the high end. In other words, he was hitting this D note all the way through that opening pattern. All right, so you see how I'm droning that D note all the way through? Now, if you leave your mandolin in standard tuning with an E, it makes that little lick very, very difficult to play. In fact, probably the opposite. You probably want to play it like that on the lower end. But I'm doing it on the higher end now with this E string dropped down to D. Okay, so what is that opening lick with that droning D on the high end there? Well, you start here, 2nd fret of the A string, right, which is actually a B note, right? So, and you're just going up and down stroke like that. And by the way, the timing of this song, it's in 6/8 time. So you got to get a... It's similar to 3/4 in that it almost sounds like a waltz sound to me, right? So you're... All right, so to there, all you're doing is... So 2, open, just like that. And then... So, then open A, so, can you get that? Down to this G note here, all right, which is 5th fret of the D string, and then you're going to go 4th fret, 2nd fret, and open. Okay, those are the notes in the pattern. They go just like that. Okay, so 2, open, 5, 4, 2, open. Okay, so once again, one more time, it's so, and you hit that D twice at the end of that first pattern. You see what I did there? Okay, so A, like that, down to that G note. Now, again, as Tim Pierce pointed out in that interview, the timing of the opening riff changes a little bit. It goes from 6/8 for a couple of bars to 1 bar of 2 beats. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, so you're doing the 1, 2 when you get to that G note there. So I'll do it really slowly. 1, 2, and I'm hitting G up to that D, again, that high D string, so. And then 4th, you're almost the same pattern, hitting that high D again. You're skipping over the A string this time from the 4th fret here, which is an F sharp note, and then an E note to the D, open. Okay, so one more time slowly. All right, and that's your opening lick to the song Iris. Okay, now the chords to the song that you can play along with during the verses are fairly straightforward, and even though there's no mandolin that I can hear during the verses, you can play along with the acoustic guitar part on the original track, and this drop D tuning actually works really nicely with the crazy drop D, whatever the guitar tuning is, all right? Because the chords work really nicely with all these D notes in there, going with the guitar that, again, is tuned mostly to Ds. So the chords in the verses here are like this. Okay, so what are those chords? Well, I'm playing just a D here, then an E minor, then a G. All right, the chords are D to E minor to G. And you can play that D just with that one note right there, the 5th fret of the A, and strum those other 2 D notes like that. So you've got a D and a D and a D. It's all 3 Ds, again, matching exactly what the acoustic guitar is doing, right? So then just move down 1 fret to here, which is the 4th fret of the A. It's a C sharp note, but it works nicely with the bass note that the bass player and the acoustic guitar are playing to become an E minor chord, or even an E minor 7 chord, like that, okay? So then the final chord is a G, and instead of playing G as you normally would like this, you've got to play it like that, because this note is now moved up to there. So 2nd fret of the A string, and now 5th fret here of the E string, like that. So D to E minor, G, right? And don't forget to keep that kind of waltz pattern going. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, like that, okay? So, and then we move up to here. So what are those chords? So this is a B minor, and this is an A chord, or an A sus4 chord, actually, and then your G chord. So what's that B minor chord? Well, that's it right there. It's the 5th fret of the A string, right? And the open D, and now you're up to the 9th fret here of the E string, all right? So that works out, again, as a B minor chord played against the B in the bass. The bass player will give you the root. You don't have to play the root on some of these chords. You can do the upper half of the chord voicing like that. So that's the first chord. Then you move down just slightly to the 4th fret and the 7th fret now, and that becomes, with this D note, that becomes an A sus4 chord, because the D is the 4th of the A scale, A, B, C sharp, D, right? So that gives you an A sus4 chord, which is actually the song that the guitar player is playing in the song. And then finally, down to that G chord again that I showed you here, 2nd fret and 5th fret. Okay, so the verse chords again. the verse chords throughout the first part of the song. And the chorus, surprisingly enough, is similar to that. It's actually the second half repeated. So that B minor part to A sus4 to G, just repeat that, and that's the chorus. It goes... All right, and you want to, again, you want to kind of get a little rhythm going in between those. See how I'm doing that? And I'm just letting these two strings ring out, okay? So, and I mean this G string and the D string. I'm just letting those ring out as I'm moving these notes down. And it really works nicely against the acoustic guitar in this song. Okay, there are some cool little fills now that I want to show you, and I've tried to figure them out as close to possible. I hope they're pretty accurate, but if they're not, you know, drop me a line, let me know if you think that one of these parts is slightly wrong or something like that. So the first little fill is really cool. At the end of the first verse, it just goes like that. All right, it's played right at the end of... like that, okay? But you can create a little double stop with that. So what is that? Well, that's just 4th fret here of the D, 5th fret, like that, and then to that D note here, 5th fret of the A string, and then here, 2nd fret of the E string. Okay, so you see how I've left those two notes together to ring out as a little chord? You can do it like this. Doesn't really matter what fingers you use. I can do it like this. And just let that little note ring out there at the end. Okay, in the second verse, there are similar fills, those same notes that I just showed you, but a little bit faster. He goes like this. That's all he does. It's just that same pattern. So 4th, 5th, 5, and then 5 again, but faster. He does it faster the second time through in the second verse. Just like that. Okay, so... then finally, at the end of the second verse, there's a cool little pattern that starts with a... like that. Starts off just with this chord here, the A sus4, and then I hear a little walk down. Like that. Okay, so what's that? Well, after the A sus4 chord, then I'm walking down from here, which is 5th fret here on the A, 4th fret on the E, then 4th fret to 2nd, and then that G chord. But finally, at the end of the G chord, you go back to that D note. So once again, you start off just hitting that once, and then you go like that. One more time. And again, you can hit those chords off that low D string. So that's an A sus4. Then you do... that's the little fill that goes at the end of the second verse. Okay, there's another cool little part, a cool little descending part that comes just before the song gets heavier, some of those heavier parts in the guitar solo. It's a cool little descending riff that goes like this. You see what I'm doing there? So actually what I'm doing there is I'm hitting this chord here, and again, everything is off that open D. Keep that open low D ringing out here, and then like that. So what are those notes? Well, that's the 9th fret of the A string and the 12th fret of the E. So, and hit that one twice at the end. And then just slide it down slightly to the 7th fret of the A now, and the 11th fret of the E string. So, right? And then slide that same grip down 2 frets to your B minor grip, right? The B minor I showed you before, which is 5th fret of the A, and the, what's that, the 9th fret of the E. And then finally, just slide down to that A sus4 again, right? Which is the 4th fret here and the 7th fret there. So one more time. Like that. You see that? And that pattern repeats twice. Okay, and I'm going to show you the heavier parts of the song now, which you can do, and you can play along with the original track, even though I'm not sure there's mandolin in these parts, the heavier parts here. The parts go like this. And so on, right? So what is that? Well, I'm playing sort of a D5 power chord there, the first, and basically it's the same thing. It's the D to E minor to G chords, right? But I'm just playing it a little bit differently to give it a little more punch, and I'm also playing it more staccato-like too, so, right? So I'm just holding down the 5th fret here and the 5th fret there on these highest strings and the low D, so, and you want to just cut it off at the end. Like that, so like that. So the second chord is that E minor again, E minor 7, I guess it is. And again, you want to hit that staccato-like, but you actually hit it twice. You hit the D first once, then to E minor. You give it a second time before you go to that G. All right, so. Okay, so one more time. And then what do you do on the G? Well, you do something really cool. So I'm just going that G chord, and then I'm pulling this finger down to the 4th fret of the E string, so, and then 5, 4, open to that D again. So, and again, when I'm going to the 4th fret here, I'm taking this finger off. All right, so now I guess I'm making that some kind of A chord, right? So it's going like that. All right, so that is the heavy part leading up to the guitar solo. Now, underneath the guitar solo in this song, the mandolin sounds to me like it's just staying on the same pattern. And it's a little bit of a, well, it's a little bit of a strange pattern, really, or a staccato-like. So it sounds to me like he's just using that note there, which is the 2nd fret of the A to the open A, right? And making this here into a D chord with that 2nd fret of the G. So. You see, I'm just hitting that once. That's the pattern, and then right at the end of the pattern it's a couple of times faster, but like that. You got to listen to the track and play along with it, but that to me is what it sounds like the mandolin is playing. Now, coming out of that part, right at the end of the guitar solo, a really cool little mando lick. It's really sweet, and it goes. All right, so what is that? Well, from that 4th fret of the A string up to the 7th fret of the E, so then you move that finger up to the 5th fret. Right, and let it ring out. Then you go here. So that's the 4th fret now of the D string up to that high note there, the 5th fret, and then 5, 4. Like that. One more time, that little lick right at the end of the solo. All right, and the final fade out parts, basically you're just repeating the chorus. that chord pattern again, B minor to A sus4 to G. And they end it by going, instead of to the G, the very final one, final pattern, they go back to the B minor again, all right? So, and they end there on the B minor. Then there's a couple of really cool little fills right at the end of the song. The first one is, all right, so what did I do there? Well, the first one is, it's just 5th fret here of the A string and 2nd fret there of the E, and just kind of hit the chord there like that. All right, and then there. So you're keeping that finger here locked on the 2nd fret of the E string like that. Okay, so actually goes something like that, and then you got to listen to it yourself. You'll hear it, but those are the notes. And then another, they slide up to the 4th fret here, and keeping that 5th fret locked in. So 4th fret of the E string and 5th fret of the A. So one more time. And then like that. Then there's a cool little part that goes like that. So what is that? Well, like that, okay? So the first part goes, it sounds like he's doing a little hammer on there from the 4th fret to the 5th fret to the 7th fret of the A, and then to the 4th fret of the E. And then there's a little pause. He goes, those chords I showed you earlier from that little descending pattern, remember that? Well, it's the same chords here, just going up. So that A sus4 chord to the B minor chord to this chord, I don't know what that is, but might be a C sharp chord, and then finally to that D. So what is that? Well, 4th fret here again of the A, 7th fret of the E, then 5th fret of the A, and 9th fret, again, all played on that, against that low D, right? So, and then here, 7th fret and 11th fret now, right? Like that. And then finally, which is here, that's the 9th fret and the 12th fret, okay? So, right, he just slides it up. Listen to it. It's a really lovely little pattern, legato pattern, right at the end of the song. And finally, at the end of the song, there's a little part that goes like this. I think, something like that. It's very faint, but... So that's these 2 frets here, and then reach all the way up to the 11th fret with your pinky if you can. So 5th fret here on the A, 7th fret on the E, and then he goes something like that. Something like that. Like that. But if you can hold that chord down, you can get that final little lick. Okay, those are the parts to Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. Have fun with that, working those parts out. Try them out and listen to the song closely, because some of those parts are really subtle and really difficult to hear, but they are really wonderful, and the timing of them is a little bit difficult as well, but just practice them over and over. You should be able to get them. It's not really that difficult if you detune your mandolin properly, as I showed you. With a standard tuned mandolin, you could do the same parts, but they're probably a little bit more tricky. So it's much easier just to drop that E string down to D. That's it for Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls, Part 2. Thanks very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, don't forget, hit that little red subscriber button down there in the lower right corner on your way out. If you are a returning subscriber, perhaps you want to check out our links down below to Patreon and Amazon. Thanks very much again for watching RPM.